is speech, like life, is perception. Everything is as we see it, the way that we choose to see it. Nothing more and nothing less. Do we see the donut or the hole? Do we see the glass half empty or half full? Choose the donut and the glass half full, and we are well on the way to a happy life. Choose the negatives, and misery will be ours. As the blind man sees only the images that he creates, we create our own unique impressions of what we see. Choose to focus on the positives and see the prism of life's radiant colors that are so apparent to open eyes. During World War II, there were cases of soldiers being confined for months to prison cells the size of a man's body. Some emerged from these cells quite insane and never recovered, but others survived largely unimpaired. How can that be? Mind control. The ability to see things as we wish to see them. Controlling our thoughts is the key. As the poet Milton wrote in Paradise Lost, the mind can make heaven in hell or hell in heaven. Life and speech are as we perceive them to be. It is our job to perceive them in the most positive light. We must hold to the thoughts that we wish to dominate our minds, repeating them and visualizing ourselves living them as frequently as needed until those desired thoughts become our dominant thoughts and hence our realities. Speech, like life, is neither more nor less than we perceive it to be. Most of us backed into the stuttering world because we are perfectionists and because we are overly concerned with what others think of us. As to perfectionism, since nothing on this terrestrial ball will ever be perfect, no one is going to have perfect speech, including any of us. So step one to improve speech is to accept normal imperfections. This does not mean that we must accept disabled speech, but we cannot and must not stress over any speech imperfections that fall short of the clear appearance of a speech disability. For example, normal speech mistakes can be like this. I was on the way to the office today, and I got a flat tire, and it made me an hour late to the meeting, and I got in there, and I had to go back to the car, and I got my books, and I got to the meeting, and it finally ended up okay. Now, you might say, oh, what terrible speech. But the average person thinks that speech is quite normal, and they would be offended if you told them it wasn't, and they wouldn't agree with you. Now, speech disabilities are another matter. If somebody asks me my name and I say, love it, that's a speech disability. Or if I force too many words in a row, that's a speech disability. Or if I ask my name, I simply go, that's a speech disability. We mean way too many repeats or too many forced words or silences that are clearly too long to be normal. But any speech short of that is not disabled speech, and we must not punish ourselves for normal imperfections. As to the opinions of others, we perceive our speech as halting and sometimes disabled, so we stew about appearing inferior, and the snowball of stuttering keeps growing. The simple fact is that others spend virtually no time thinking about us or anyone else because most people are hanging onto life by their proverbial fingernails. As the iconic French philosopher Voltaire wrote, most men lead lives of quiet desperation. Simply put, most people spend zero time thinking about your speech imperfections or mine. They either don't notice them or don't care, and they quickly forget them. If we communicated our message at roughly a normal space, we need to chalk it up as a success. More importantly, if we would have others think well of us, we should be focused on our conduct, not on our speech. There's only one opinion of us that really matters, our opinion of ourselves. What is needed to earn self-esteem is not great speech, nor is it money, fame, nor good looks. To have a high opinion of ourselves, we need to do two things. One, be productive to the maximum, that is, give 100% efforts at our constructive work. And if we don't like our work, change it. And second, be as loving to all mankind and domestic creatures as we can possibly be. This is extremely difficult, of course. But the closer that we can get to these objectives, the better opinion we will have of ourselves. And then the positive opinions of most others will follow, as does the night follow the day. Turning back to our perceptions of our speech, what might we do to change them to positive? We need to hear our speech at its best. To do this, we read aloud massively day after day, and we slowly create new perceptions of our speech as fluent. When we read with great feeling, our speech is ever better, enhancing our positive perceptions, while training us to speak with passion, which takes our focus off feared words and drives fluency. We can even hear more of our voice speaking at its best by playing recordings of our affirmations at idle times throughout the day, and best of all, during our sleep, a time when our conscious mind sleeps and our subconscious mind is open and receiving and highly programmable. We need to train our minds and learn to dictate our thoughts. Meditating, as I understand it, is not sufficient. We need to use self-hypnosis, or at least autosuggestion, as it was propounded by Emile Coué, the putative father of modern autosuggestion, which dictates specific thoughts. When we do this daily mind training, we hear more fluency as we repeat our positive affirmations, while we simultaneously visualize ourselves speaking those affirmations beautifully in the most pressured situations. These images and sounds, as repeated 20 or more times each affirmation, gradually become embedded impressions in our minds, further replacing negative speech perceptions with positive ones. Then, as we speak during the day, we avoid all stutters by using our crutches. This we must do to become fluent. Stored perceptions must be fed and reinforced constantly, or they shrink and disappear. This applies to fluent speech and to negative speech. So we feed the fluent memory bank and starve the stutter memory bank. In time, we will forget the habit of stuttering. We have thus reprogrammed our perceptions of our speech, as we can our lives in general. Again, we must ignore any imperfections that do not rise to the level of speech disabilities. This does not prevent us from improving our speech, but it does bar us from viewing imperfections as making our speech inferior. While we work on our perceptions of our speech, it will help to work on our perceptions of other people. Search for the good in all situations and in all people, and thus in our lives, and in our speech. By so doing, our perception of good becomes our reality. I am reminded of the inspirational Cracker Barrel philosopher, comedian, congressman, and American icon, Will Rogers, who in 1931 at the Democratic National Convention innocently said, "I've never met a man I didn't like." It's hard to say that exactly, but we can get pretty close. We can find something to like in everyone. What a joy-giving view. Just think how wonderful our day would be today and every day if only we found something to like in everyone. We can do it 99% of the time anyway. And each time we do it, our day is happier, as is the day of all about whom we find something to like. Because feeling our approval, they naturally reciprocate by approving and liking us. And we launch our own little snowball of happy relationships and happier days. Isn't that really what's important? And when we focus on that, our perceptions of our lives and of our speech become positive indeed. Our job can be approached in much the same way. Just as there is no shame in any honest labor, there is something good to be found in every job if we look for it, really look for it. I've waited tables, dumped coal cars, cleaned sewers, sung in bars, driven a cab, worked in the U.S. Senate, done door-to-door selling, and more. Jobs like people in life are perception. This is not to say that we shouldn't strive to do whatever job appeals to us most. It's just to say that happiness can be found in infinite ways. Indeed, happiness at its core is only our perception of our then life. The legendary German philosopher Hegel, as far back as 1820, asserted, "The only thing real is the mind." While that statement seemed laughable in his day, some of the world's greatest scientists now espouse surprisingly similar views. Can matter be made of strings? Or perhaps simply of thought? At the very least, our minds determine our feelings. Whatever our minds feel is what we experience. But the important point is that we are not at the mercy of our minds. We are the bosses of our own minds. Indeed, the subtitle of the first edition of my Stuttering book was, "Become the Boss of Your Mind." The mind, like a steering wheel, directs our feelings in different directions. But we are at liberty to seize that wheel and steer it wherever we like by removing any negative thoughts and implanting positive ones. Stephen Hawking contracted Lou Gehrig's disease and lost the use of all his limbs at age 21. He went on to marry and become the greatest scientist since Einstein. Here are a few of his profound words. Quote, "My expectations were reduced to zero when I was 21. Everything since then has been a bonus." Quote, "Mankind's possibilities are unbounded. All we need to do is make sure we keep talking." Quote, "Remember to look up at the stars and not down at your feet. Try to make sense of what you see, however difficult life may seem. There is always something you can do and succeed. It matters that you just don't give up. While there's life, there's hope," unquote. Before I close, I must say a few words about the cause. that has driven me unmercifully since I beat stuttering, the cause to which I have devoted my full-time efforts, 10 hours most days, 7 days a week for the past 5 years. The cause, you know, is to remove stuttering from the planet. I've tried very hard to convince the world's PWS in my way that they can stop stuttering and learn to love to speak. Some PWS call me the speech whisperer, but I don't whisper to stutterers, I listen to them. Others like Ruth Mead, the author of the excellent book Speech is a River, have called me a healer, but I'm not a healer. I'm a mechanic. I simply show PWS a host of methods that in the aggregate can enable them to cure themselves. Whatever I am, I can't begin to win the stuttering war alone. This is why I licensed my method to Speech Anxiety Cures, or SAC, a group that included an ex-law partner of mine, 2 of my sons, and some people who stopped stuttering. I don't manage or own SAC, and it doesn't pay me, but I do all in my power to support it because SAC is my only hope of spreading my methods far and wide. I lack the time, the energy, and the skill sets to do any of that. SAC is now run by ex-stutterers. It is your community. It is the world's only community where ex-stutterers help PWS beat stuttering. It has developed tons of products and services, including 4 of my speech-related books, 50 video lectures that I did explaining my books, a video library of over 800 coaching videos by myself and many other coaches, each of which is much like a private coaching session. It offers this speech club and weekly email tips and updates on the latest methods and more. In sum, SAC has made my methods much easier to understand and use than I can do by myself. It offers all of this for a cost less than 1 hour of the average therapist's time. You can't find anything like this anywhere else in the world at any price. For heaven's sakes, take advantage of SAC. Help yourself. Help other PWS. Help me help all of you. SAC is the fastest track to stop stuttering and learn to love to speak in all venues, and to learn mind training methods that will elevate your life forever. So join me and the world's only group of ex-stutterers in SAC. I'm going to end this talk, but I'll ask you to remember this. In the final analysis, your happiness is within your control. There is no one else to blame or credit. Your mind is programmed by what you feed it. Either you program your mind or the environment will do it for you. You can and should control and dictate your thoughts. Your perceptions of your speech and life are your choice. And your choices will be your realities. Resolve today to make the perceptions of your speech and life positive. And positive, your life and speech shall be.